Today I'm going to talk to you about our Quick Dam Flood Control product line. This is what we call our Sandless sandbag. It starts out just like this, and inside here is a powder you're going to see inside. It actually looks a lot like sugar, but it's actually a super absorbent polymer. And when it gets wet, it expands and swells up and turns into what we can call a sandbag. So I'm going to give you a demonstration here. In this bucket here, I have already put in about 3 gallons of water. This typical sandbag absorbs about 4 gallons of water. They'll end up weighing about 32 pounds when they're completely saturated. So I'm going to let that soak for a minute, and I'm going to add a little bit more water here so we can show that it's absorbing about 4 gallons of water. So for demonstration purposes, if you're at a trade show, I would normally put this out as a sandbag so that everybody can see that it's a fully saturated. You can show the beginning and the after. Doing this multiple times a day is going to be a little bit too difficult with the size of the sandbag. This is what we call our miniature sandbag. We'll send these out to salespeople to use for demonstrations, usually at a desktop or something, and we send it with this tub. So you're going to drop it right in here, and you're going to actually add about 32 ounces of water. So I'm going to pour this whole bottle in here. This is only about 16 ounces. It'll show that the bag is about half its size, but I'm going to pour another bottle in here so you can see how big it actually gets. And while they're doing it, you can actually see while it's growing at the same time. So it's a fairly effective demonstration. And you can see that it's already starting to swell and expand. So the sandbag here is going to weigh about 32 pounds when they're saturated. What you can do with them now is you can stack them. You're going to build a wall just like you would with standard sandbags. So they're going to be in a brick or pyramid formation. You can go about 3 high before it starts to get a bit too wobbly, but after at that point you're going to want to widen the base like you would with a pyramid so that it doesn't get too wobbly, so it's more stable. So the sandbag here, you can see it's actually growing quite a bit. We do supply them in 6-packs. So this is the standard retail package. There's 6 of them in this bag. It typically retails for about the $40 range, so that's just over $6 a bag. But at this point, you don't need sand, you don't need labor. All you need is access to water. Typically, when there's a flooding situation, you're going to have access to water at that point. So you could use river, stream, puddles, a garden hose, whatever you might have access to. The one thing it does not work with is salt water. It is not used for salt water. Unfortunately, there is a chemical reaction with salt and the superabsorbent polymer, and it starts to degrade it, so it will not hold its shape or form, and thus it will just flatten right back out again. So you will not have an effective sandbag for those situations. So we'll talk to you about other products as we come down the line for saltwater situations. Okay, so next I'm going to talk to you about our flood barriers. The flood barriers are essentially a similar version of the sandbag, but now we're talking about a longer version. Now you can put one long unit in front of a doorway or a garage. So we offer the flood barriers in 5-foot, 10-foot, and 17-foot lengths. The 5-foot goes in front of a single doorway, the 10-foot a single car garage, and a 17-foot goes in front of a double wide car garage. So how the flood barriers work, this is a miniature sample of a cut piece just to show you. And inside here, the powder that you saw in the sandbags is actually what's layered in between these cellulose fibers that are layered within the flood barrier throughout its whole length. And then it's stitched in place, so no matter where it's going to get wet, it's going to swell up. So you don't have to worry about shaking the powder down to one end to make sure that it swells up. It's going to be throughout the whole length. So the flood barrier is designed in a special format here. It has what we call a wedge, and what we've done is we've designed it for a couple of reasons. The wedge acts as as the water is rushing towards the flood barrier, this is going to prevent it from rolling out of place. So as the water rushes towards it, it acts as a wedge against the backside of it so it doesn't roll out of position. The other thing is that it also helps the flood barrier absorb more moisture from the surface as well as create a better barrier. So when you have a round circular item and then you put a stitch in it, you'll see that it gets wider and flatter, which creates more surface area on the ground to prevent the water from seeping underneath. So this is the flood barrier. We offer it in the 5-foot package. There's 2 of them in a pack, or one 10-footer, and that typically retails for about $25. And then the 17-foot is 1 to a pack, and that retails for about $40. One of the major questions we have is, what do you do with them once you've activated them? There actually are several different options. You can leave them outdoors. If you have a continuing rain issue where every time it happens to rain, you get water coming into your basement or your garage, you would leave it out for potentially the whole season. So when it's raining, they're going to swell up and activate. When it's not raining, they're going to start shrinking down and evaporating. So when they get wet again, they're going to reactivate, and they will continue to do that for a good 6 to 8 months if you're using them in a sunnier environment. They could last over a year if you're using them in a drier environment or in a not so sunny area. So if you have a pile of sandbags and now you want to get rid of them, you don't necessarily want to leave them out for the whole season, you just want to get rid of them. Now your options are you can let them evaporate completely, which would typically take between a 2-month cycle. It's probably going to take about 2 months to let the water evaporate completely, and what you would be left with would be a crunchy hard bag, flat, that you could then fold up and store away on a shelf and use again at a later date. The other option is to cut them open, and you can either expose the contents directly to sunlight and let the UV lights break it down, or you could potentially add salt or salt water, and that will also break it down. So now you could actually just dispose of empty bags and not have to carry around big heavy bags to transport and even dispose of. So for disposal options, you do have the options to either keep them outdoors for the whole season, or let them biodegrade, let them evaporate, or break them down through cutting them open and letting the contents break down through sunlight. So there are a few different options. One of the other things I wanted to mention on the flood barrier, as well as some of the sandbags, that they are stitched together, and some of the stitching will go through the material, which would cause some of the polymer to seep out of the stitching. So I just wanted to point out, if you actually look at this particular sample, and if you pull apart, you'll see along the seam here, you'll see some powder here. This is actually the super absorbent powder. It actually is completely non-hazardous, it's non-toxic, it's inert. It is the same type of material that's found inside baby diapers, so you don't have to worry about it causing any hazardous reaction or anything to that nature. Sometimes it just happens to come out because of the needles go through the material and it comes out. So it just happens to be a nature of the product. So it's nothing to be concerned about, or it's not defective or any way. Another question we get is, do we need to pre-soak them? It really depends on your situation. If you are expecting a rush of water, or a storm is coming and you're expecting to have to control back water, you're going to want to build the wall ahead of time. Just like you would with sandbags, you're going to pre-soak them, you're going to stack them and build the retaining wall ahead of time and be prepared for the storm. If you have nuisance water that comes into your home just whenever it rains, you could potentially leave it out. The only thing I would suggest is putting some type of rock or a weight or something on it, because they are quite lightweight to begin with, so until they start absorbing, they could potentially float out of position. So you want to put a rock or a weight or something on it just to keep it in place for the nuisance water. But for big storms, definitely soak them ahead of time and be prepared. Okay, so the last product I'd like to talk to you today about is the Watergate. The Watergate is an item that can be used in any type of water, fresh water or salt water, it doesn't matter. It is not an absorbing type of product whatsoever. It is strictly a quick responding way to flood control. So I'm going to talk about, they have 3 different versions. The first one is the economy line, and when I say economy, I mean this is designed for occasional use. It uses a very light material, very similar to a tarp material. So when I say light duty use, I'm definitely meaning if you're going to be using it frequently for larger storms, then you would definitely want to go for the heavier grade. This is designed for light duty use because potentially if there is a rush of water, sticks or something could potentially float across and puncture this type of material. So it is designed for the light duty. The other thing about it is that it actually comes with this product here. It's just a bag that you put sand in or something heavy to slide into the front barrier weight. So you're going to actually slide this right into the front, and it's going to act as the weight. So let me show you how the actual Watergate works. The Watergate is, if you think about it as a pop-up pool, it's a wall that you're literally going to roll out in this case of a storm, or you have water that you're going to prepare for, and as the water comes, it's actually going to come from this direction. This is a weight that is attached on the heavy grade version, and the water will actually go right over the top of that weight. It'll go right between the material, and then it will lift the wall up. So this wall height, depending on what your application is going to range anywhere from 6 inches, which is what this is. This happens to be a little tabletop sample size, so it's a 3 foot by 6 inch high, but it goes anywhere from 6 inches all the way up to 5 feet high. So if you have large storms, big flooding situations, this is absolutely a great product for that. So as the water comes underneath here, it's going to lift the wall up. How the system works is for every 1 foot in height that you want for protection, you're going to have a 4 foot skirt underneath the ground. And what happens is as the water travels over that skirt, it acts as the anchor to hold it into position. So as the water goes underneath here and it hits the end, it's not going to move out of place. It's going to anchor it right into place. So, and the walls here, are held in place, and it's stitched all the way across on the top and the bottom, so it will never flip open. It will always stay in this position. So the ends, they come 25 and 50 foot lengths. The ends of each one of them has double-sided Velcro connected at both ends, so you can now actually connect multiple units together and make a mile of it if you needed to. So you connect multiple units together. Depending on the size, they're going to come in bags, boxes, or crates. So if you have a 5-foot-high wall by 50-foot length, we're going to put those into a crate, ship it out, and you can actually put them on the back of a truck and feed it right off of the back of a truck. As the truck moves, you just feed it right off, and it puts the whole path down. So when the water comes, it's going to go up underneath, and it's going to act as the wall. As the water recedes, it's going to drop down. When the water recedes and you no longer need it, recommend drying it out, making sure that it doesn't have any moisture in it, and then you can store it away for a future storm. So the material that this is made out of is extremely durable. It'll last over 20 years. So you can use this for multiple storms. If you have situations where there are a rising river, for example, and there are multiple houses connecting, along the river, potentially each home could buy their own, connect them together, and act as a team to barricade the water back. So that's something as an option. Another thing is the city, the state, the municipalities, when there's storms, they're going to have an emergency preparedness team. This might be something that they might be very interested in. So that's another option. Now to go to one step further, we now have the waterway version. This is designed for water currents. Similar concept, but it is designed for water to eventually go over the top. If you're going to put this in a stream and you're doing environmental projects, one of the main criteria is you're not allowed to alter the environment. The benefit to this is you're literally laying it down. It's holding the water back temporarily. As the water travels over the top, it has this back patch that goes over the soil, so you'll actually prevent any erosion from happening from the soil underneath on the backside as well. So it is great for environmental projects that you need to hold back or temporarily stop water for a period of time to do some construction projects. So this is the design for the Watergate. They come anywhere from 6-inch high protection wall on all the way up to 5 feet. The length of them is typically 25 to 50 foot lengths. It is a very labor intensive product. There is quite a bit of stitching, so we highly recommend being prepared and allow at least a 30-day time frame to get special sizes or larger volumes into stock. So just keep that in mind. All right, so this is our selection of our flood control products. We have our 6-pack of Sandless sandbags. They're coming into this package right now. And we've just introduced the emergency preparedness packs for people that are needing larger volumes of sandbags. They don't just need 6, but they want a larger amount. So we offer a 20-pack now, as well as a 120-pack. So for the large disasters, we can send out cases of the 120, and then we can also palletize and ship them out in larger volumes. So we also have the 5-foot and 10-foot flood barriers, as well as the 17s. And I'd recommend that you look through the literature to look at the latest retail display options. We do have pallet displays for the larger stores for emergencies, as well as quarter pallet, eighth of a pallet, and shelf displays as well. And then here's the Watergate. This is going to come, depending on the size, it's going to come in its own little bag, depending if it's small enough, and then all the way up to the large crates like I mentioned earlier. So the situation with flood control products, unfortunately there's not a specific category or department within a store for flood products. So we have to try to fit within what's already into the stores. So I typically recommend the plumbing department, because typically most customers will end up going looking for sump pumps. So because there is no area for the flood control products, we've actually created a few little extras to try to help promote the idea. So this is what we call our cross merchandiser, or wobbler. You can locate, we supply these with several of our retail displays, and you can put this in several areas throughout the store to draw attention to it, and then you would put your display in the one area. So you just make sure that the store clerks happen to know where the display is. And then we also offer a DVD which has the video that talks about all of these products as well, and you can put this into your store. It shows demonstrations and you can see how the product works, so we will include that as well. So this will be part of the packages for helping in the retail environment. So we do recommend for flood situations when the seasons do come that we will get quite busy. So if you can let your customers know to try to please order in advance or give us advance orders to ship at a certain date, that will help us plan for production. So thank you very much for listening to the training information. I hope it was useful, and if you have any questions, certainly feel free to give us a call. Thank you.